As a writer, I find it astonishing that Jay-Z does not write down his lyrics. He does not impress paper with ink in order to impress his hearers with his complex rhymes. He does not so much as scribble his thoughts on paper or type them on any surface or screen. Given the huge quantity and high quality of his oeuvre, his work is all the more remarkable. Orality is a defining feature of black culture. The oral tradition of crafting and transmitting African American folk tales was inherited by enslaved Africans from their continental forebears. These oral stories were designed to make sense of the brutal conditions foisted on black souls in the New World during the long siege of transatlantic slavery. Folk tales from the African oral tradition seeped into the fabric of black expression and performance. One popular example, The People Who Could Fly, captures the incredible story of mass suicide by Africans in bondage. The story is transformed into a celebration of resistance and liberation in the face of racial violence and chattel slavery. There is little doubt that hip-hop culture creatively extends the moral instincts of the oral tradition. As a hip-hop writer, Jay-Z epitomizes black orality in the 21st century. But Jay doesn't primarily rap about slavery. His most profound contributions to the African-American oral tradition are more like hustler-turned-author Iceberg Slim than novelist Charles Chestnut. Where's Iceberg Slim? He was the coldest cat, say those asking Jay-Z to come out of retirement on Kingdom Come. Instead, Jay has made high art of low culture. Some of his most salient contributions to the African-American oral tradition are gritty and at times violent narratives that portray underground economies in the waning years of the 20th century. Friend or Foe, from 1996's Reasonable Doubt, and 1998's Friend or Foe 98, from In My Lifetime, Volume 1, are two classic examples of this form. Neither of these are best described as songs. Friend or Foe has a runtime of about 1 minute and 50 seconds, and Friend or Foe 98 clocks in at just over 2 minutes. Neither track has any semblance of a hook. Both performances in tandem complete the story of how Jay's narrator first warns and then disposes of his would-be competition in the drug game. The style of the lyrics is conversational and flippant, downplaying the sort of cutthroat approaches to the turf wars that plague illegal drug dealing. The setting is out of state, and in Friend or Foe, with piercing staccato horns blowing away, Jay's narrator advises his opponent to never, ever, 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 ever come around here no more. In Friend or Foe 98, fretful guitars dominate the soundscape as his competition returns with schemes to murder Jay's narrator. His opponent is foiled, and Jay's narrator kills him, and in the process of pulling the trigger, sends salutations and ice cubes to his recently departed friend Biggie Smalls. The Friend or Foe tag team was not designed for radio airplay. The songs don't have, nor do they require, music videos. Each is its own cinematic glimpse into the life of a New York drug dealer hustling in Virginia, or elsewhere in the South, only to find that some northeastern hustler has the same idea of making easy money where the demand is high, law enforcement is soft, and competition is limited. Jay's vocal performance, particularly on the original Friend or Foe, sounds effortless. The recording plays more like a freestyle than a premeditated, written set of rhymes. This is both intentional and a consequence of Jay's artistic process. The lyrical work sounds unrehearsed and therefore more authentic, and in this sense, more easily absorbed into an established African-American oral tradition. But the unrehearsed, free-flowing aesthetic of the Friend or Foe verses also reflects Jay-Z's writing process. That process in turn helps to bolster the aesthetic and epic nature of the Friend or Foe conflict. The aesthetic requires a demeanor in the narrator that is effortlessly cool, but ultimately calculating, given the stakes of this illegal game. Revisiting the Friend or Foe narratives reminds listeners of the prelude to Jay-Z's Breathe Easy lyrical exercise, where he talks specifically about committing lyrics to memory as he navigates urban corners, hustling his illegal product. Jay-Z's lyrical process itself feels a tad illegal, as if his gifts violate some unwritten law, as if not writing words down and using mnemonic tricks should not lead to artistic dominance. Jay-Z's artistic process forces us to rethink exactly what it means to write, which should be reimagined, at least in this case, as an operation exclusively using the mind. We often consider metaphor to be the figurative tool of choice for MCs and rappers. That is a subtle allusion to the fact that aficionados make a distinction between kinds of rhetorical creativity. MCs mastered the mic with technical skills and verbal dexterity. Rappers command the mic with political passion or personal zeal, but the art of allusion has quietly become a major component of all great hip-hop songs. Allusions thrive as implied references and have always been near the top of Jay's creative chamber. Much of Jay's artistic swagger relies on the implications of his proven ability to survive the pitfalls of hustling in America. Thus, his body of work regularly alludes to his life as a hustler. This macro allusion to his life experiences requires him to tap into the underground world of drug dealing in the belief that his audience shares some measure of the experience with him. And yet, from the time of his first release, 1996 Reasonable Doubt, most of Jay's audience wasn't standing on urban corners slinging crack rocks. But something artistically transformative occurred. Jay's allusions to hustling assumed an audience that understood the experiences he detailed in his lyrics. There was an elusive connection between an ex-hustler rapping about hustling and his audience of hustlers. That elusive connection in turn provided all of Jay's listeners an authentic sense of the experiences he alluded to in order to create the music in the first place. Allusions often require a lyrical leap of faith that the person, figure, text, art, or piece of literature the poet suggests can be easily discerned by her audience. That discernment is driven by the shared experiences that underwrite the figurative force of allusions. After Biggie's untimely death, Jay repeatedly cited his fallen friend on record. Each citation of Biggie is a self-contained allusion to him. These allusions, and Jay's recurring citation of Biggie's lyrics, or references to them in various ways, form an ongoing tribute to his comrade and permit Jay's audience to share the experience with him. In this case, it is the experience of loss and the mourning that attends the brutal public murder of an iconic hip-hop figure.